really what I want to say is that shadow work is not popular with people. It's not something that, it's not a concept, generally speaking, that people are happy to dive into, because in it of itself, it's something that we've put away, that we've decided is not something that people approve of, or it's not acceptable to society, our culture, our family even. So we have lots of different aspects of us that we put away in order to be sociable. And that's all coming right up right now as we are being separated from each other. I believe that right now there are opportunities for all of this to come up, all of our shadow aspects to come up, not just to be seen, but also to be healed, rather than pushed back down again into what Robert Bly calls the black bag that we drag around behind us. Every time we push something down, we also push down a part of ourself, a part of our creative, our wild, untamable self. And we've all been conditioned, let's say, by our parents to start with, our teachers, our peers, even conditioned to behave in a way that it gives us a sense of belonging in a way, but in the process it denies a whole part of our creative, our potential to be amazing human beings that we are. And at the moment we're seeing, I believe, we're seeing the best of us as humans and the very worst of us as humans. And that's the shadow coming out to be seen. And it's time for us to really take a look. and I know that we were talking originally about your artwork as well. It's like bringing out the shadow for people to see. This is really important. Poets, artists, writers, creative people, it's our job to show the underbelly of society, because if we don't, it's going to spill out everywhere. And that's what's been happening.
You know, when you were saying about things being pushed down, and I'm wondering like how that works in the benefit of the society we live in. And how much those things that we put down or that we don't like about ourselves kind of plays into capitalism and consumerism and that whole system.
Yeah.
And also just kind of reflecting on my own experience and knowing, like, having done some shadow work with you, and afterwards I had the biggest kind of creative outpouring of my life, you know, and that was 2 years ago and I haven't stopped painting. So I can definitely attest to that notion, you know, that the things that are pushed down into that bag do need to be seen and brought up into the light of day, and integrated, you know. And as you say, so many things are coming up collectively, you know, with coronavirus and with, you know, the racial stuff that's going on.
It's time for us to heal these things, to integrate them, to stop polarizing. You know, we're birthed into a duality. That's what planet Earth is all about. This and that, right, wrong, good, bad, the fight against evil versus good. You know, we've outlived that in a way. We've gone as far as we can go in that direction and as far as we can go in the other direction. And it's time for us to bring these two things back into balance, because that's what we're being asked to do right now. And the coronavirus, I believe, is an upgrade to our, you know, our human consciousness. It's an upgrade. It's telling us it's time to come back to what is it we really are as humans, because all this finger wagging and criticism and intolerance and that's not really who we are. Well, it's part of who we are, but is that how we want to live our lives together in harmony on this planet? And no, it isn't. But you can't live in harmony simply by being nice and no. That doesn't work either. That's half the problem. Half the problem is that we want to be divine human beings, but at the same time we've got this demonical aspect of us that we have put away, and we've demonized it, and we've said it's wrong and it's bad. And let me tell you that it will follow you around if we do not own it and embrace it and tolerate it. And I'm not asking anybody to love it, but actually bring it in and accept that's who we are. We're as stupid as we are intelligent. We're as ugly as we are beautiful. These we polarize, but if we could only bring these things back in together, then we could be so much more than we are right now. And every time we push down into that black bag, we repress, we suppress, we depress, and we aren't being allowed to express our true, authentic self in the world. You touched on it just now about capitalism, consumerism, this, whatever we put in our black bag creates a void in us, an empty. And we have to fill it with something. And if we don't pull out from that black bag and own those aspects of ourselves, then we'll find an empty space within us, and we will think ourselves to be somehow inadequate. Something's missing. I don't know what it is that's missing, but something is missing in my life. And then we fill it up with crap. This is how addictions happen. This is how we become consumers. I love I think it's one of Adam Curtis's films. He talks about our job as humans now has become shopping. That's our job. And that's dreadful. That is dreadful, because that's not what we're here for.
Yeah. It reminds me of that Marion Woodman quote that the addiction is a ritual with the wrong God in the center.
Yes.
And yes, that kind of speaks to what you're talking about, I think. And also, the idea that whatever is pushed down is the kind of flip side of that, the power that is available in that.
Yeah. You were talking to me the other day about Snow White. And it reminded me a little bit of the story of Psyche as well, with Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, and thought she was the most beautiful. And then along comes Psyche, who, is innocent and the most beautiful. And Aphrodite gets jealous and envious and does horrible things to put Psyche through all kinds of different tests, sends her down into the underworld, puts her through loads of different tests along the way. And, this is our journey, actually, to find not the external beauty that Aphrodite lives by, but the deep, dark beauty of that juice that is that lives there. That means that we can live fully, live wholeheartedly, rather than on the surface of, nice painted nails and look in the mirror, am I the most beautiful one of all, and all that kind of stuff. And we all do that as women. We do this, but it's really important also to go, there's more, and I'm going deeper. And in that going deeper, oh my word, you find your gift, which is what happened for you, really. Out came all your paintings from under the bed. It's like, it just reminds me of all the monsters that live under the bed when we're little. We have to check them out, and yeah, we're that's it too, isn't it? Even when we're tiny and we don't understand anything, we do understand there are monsters that, you know, that are either under the bed or in the wardrobe or somewhere where they're invisible, but we know they're there, and that's part of our humanness. And that, I believe, is another reason why we should do our shadow work. Because look at how many people are on Prozac, how many people are fearful, how many people are anxious and depressed. This is, you know, this is our society that we've created. And yeah, shadow work should be very much more popular. But it isn't, because it asks us to go visit with the aspects of us that are deemed unacceptable, unlovable, and we've paid more attention to our superficial, outward masks that we wear. And isn't it interesting that, you know, we're being asked to mask up? Don't go out without your mask. Don't show up without your mask. And you know, I've got this thing about I can't wear makeup, so I've never been able to wear a mask. Even it just doesn't work for me. So it's like, perhaps that's why that's my work, you know, unmasking that which is superficial, and my yearning to have everybody see the beauty that sits inside that shadow place. A real gift that's in it, rather than run away from it.
Yeah, I mean, when I started making art, you know, after that big kind of burst of energy, and I found what I was drawing on. The thing with art is that, you know, it comes from the subconscious. So I don't control what I make work about. I'm drawn to certain things and I work with that. So, you know, what I found was that I was working with pornography, you know, as a kind of source material. And I was shocked, you know, I was like, oh my God, you know, what is this? And, you know, I kind of went with it, and I've been working with it for almost 2 years now. And, you know, it's like kind of Kierkegaard quote, you know, that life can only be lived forward and understood backwards.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about art. You know, I can only make it and then retrospectively maybe understand what it's about, you know. But like the idea that kind of pornography is a mirror onto our culture, and it's showing us what is taboo and what is repressed, and that, you know, you can only really understand a culture through looking at the things that are pushed down.
But in a way, that's exactly it, because art brings up and puts on the table the untouchable things. You know, that's what art is meant to be. Like in the ancient times, there would always be the troubadours who would be truth tellers, and they would sing their truth. And art is meant to, that's what art is meant to do, to show us what we are not willing to see. And it can appear to be raw. Your art is raw and right close to the bone, you know, and that's what I love, because it's real, and it's not hiding anything. So when people look at it, they're going to be shocked and maybe repelled, which is what's happened to you recently, I think, with the cancellation of an order that you had. And it's like, yeah, but it's important to show where we're at. You know, we are at an end time, and all end times look like that. It's real. And I think that's the courage it takes to be an artist, you see, to put that up and say, this is where we're at. And at the same time, you know, it's sex and violence. Look at the world. Look at what's going on, all the shadow aspects. I mean, this Epstein stuff, wow, that's going to go deep to the core, and it shows a core wound that we have.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because with the arrest of Ghislaine Maxwell, people, many people think, will she make it? That there's a kind of general consensus that she'll die in some kind of uncertain circumstances before the truth will even able to be voiced.
Yeah.
So that's how much the repression, how strong the repression is. I think the thing that's really interesting with that case is, and there's lots of crossovers with things at the moment, but it's kind of like the corruption of power, and in the impunity with which power operates.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it really, because if you think about sex and violence, what you're talking about is power over. When we're not talking about sacred sex, we're talking about sex and violence, pornography. This is, this is power over. This is people not actually owning their power. And something will happen for sure, that it won't come out. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier about the repression of our voices, the repression of the truth. Nobody wants the truth. And Facebook, all of those, it's going to be interesting to see where it all goes, how it all eventually pans out, because people's voices are being suppressed and repressed. The truth is being hidden. And that which people, the dark side of humanity, that underbelly that's coming up to be seen, is going to be pushed back down. And part of our job is to keep that alive. But we can't do it on a big picture. We have to do it here.
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking about sex and violence. It's, when I look at nature, sex and violence exists in nature, and, so I believe, that is part of our nature.
Yeah.
It's just that, and I know there is power, but power doesn't always have to mean power over. It can mean power too. It's how the power is held.
Exactly.
And I think in my work, like, sex and violence is about kind of undermining civilization, like, in a way, like coronavirus, like this wild, untamed outbreak of nature that undermines all of the security that we've built up, and it shows how tenuous these structures are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally get that. And you're right, nature is wild and untamable, and there is, sex and violence exists, and when we demonize it, and we've done that with the earth herself, we've demonized it. It's like in the religious context, the earth is dirty. I was shocked when I was in America that they call the earth dirt. It's like, that makes it dirty. And it's like, to me, it's our mother, it's our foundation, it's the life-giving blood that feeds us. So why would it be called dirt? It might just seem like a linguistic thing, but there's a connotation with that is really interesting. And so the feminine herself has been made dirty in that way. And well, that goes back a long, long way to, since the beginning, I think.
Do you think it predates the Bible?
Yes, I suspect it does. And I don't know for sure, but I know that even the Bible tells a story. And I really want to unpick that at some point, this story of Eve being tempted by the serpent to bite from the apple of knowledge. What, you know, when she did that, we all got kicked out of the garden. It's a tricky one. You know, I spent some time with indigenous peoples, and they don't appear to have the same disrespect for the feminine that our culture has. They don't appear to have that. So is it because they were never kicked out of the garden, that they knew that they were, they didn't have that story even. They didn't have the story of Eve. So does it predate the Bible? Does it predate religion? If you think about the story of Inanna, she was the queen of heaven. And that story is one of the first stories that was ever discovered. So she was the queen of heaven and wanted to discover her, or to go and meet with her sister in the underworld. So she was willing to go there. But even in that story, that was an unusual thing to do. And so she was warned against it. So I don't know whether this is part of our, you know, absolutely part of our humanness, that we don't want to visit those places, and when we do, we come back with an incredible gift, and also a kind of wisdom that is not generally held. So what I want to say is, when she was queen of heaven, she was queen of everything. Then she wanted to go and visit. She came back. She was queen of heaven and earth. She had everything. What do you do with everything? I don't know. You know, it's a tricky one, this, because not everybody wants to make that journey. But if we do, we realize, we make real the godness within us, the true, not the superficial. I'm queen of up here, but our wholeness, our completeness, the bringing together of the dark and the light. Is it, like I said at the beginning, it's not a popular concept. So yeah, I don't know, Siena. I don't know if we've always had that.
If you think about that, you know, the feminine, and like a woman's body is kind of occulted, it's hidden, you know, in comparison to a man's.
Yeah.
You know, and something about the hiddenness or the unknown aspect that, and maybe this connects to shadow as well, that is scary or frightening, or
yeah, maybe it's the invisible then, isn't it? It's that which is invisible, and that in a way it's the feminine aspect of us that holds the mystery, the invisible. And that willingness to go into the dark, perhaps the fact that we have to do that in order to give birth, you know, and also to let go, to let things die at the end of every menstrual cycle, you know, to go into that place in the underworld. That only, in a way, only women can do that, because, or the feminine aspect of us can do that, because the masculine is all about the light and out there. So I suspect that it's always been so. So we've just, as consciousness has grown, we've become more and more and more conscious of these aspects, and understanding understanding means standing under, really standing in to experience what that really means. So, yeah, questions, unanswerable questions, but ones that need to be asked. We need artists, we need storytellers, we need people who have made that journey before to show us that it's possible and that it's important, and that's where the truth of us lives, in those places. That's why it's really important to have that. Your artwork is really symbolic of where we're at as a society, and that's really important.
I needed to hear that. Thank you. It's, yeah, I mean, I feel like my artwork is a filtering of what's going on in the world, because a lot of the source material is found material. It's news headlines and, things that are already existing. So it's kind of bringing together different aspects. And yeah, but as you say, like, shadow work isn't that popular, and sometimes just having the ability to keep going and keep delving in, and it can be like
it takes courage, Siena. It takes courage, but in a way we need that. We need courageous people right now, and people willing to speak out the truth, to show the truth of what's happening. And it's not popular, and of course everywhere on Facebook it's being suppressed, repressed, denied. You can be sure if you put up something on Facebook that is that goes against the status quo, it's going to be taken down. It's important to have, to keep going, but to have places where our voice can be heard and where we can be accepted as truth tellers, because that's what we are. Certainly that's what you are. The same could be said for poets who are writing the truth. The same could be said for all the doctors and nurses that are speaking out now and who are being gagged. This is not okay, but it's where we're at.
Yeah, and that's almost like a kind of collective repression of the shadow, isn't it? That the algorithmic repression of a shadow, and it's interesting how technology kind of is totally informed by our own biases.
Yes, but we need to gather people who are willing to hear the truth, stand for the truth, voice the truth. And that may be different to somebody else's truth, and that has to be okay. But I go back to the beginning. Shadow work is not popular simply because it's shadow. It's been suppressed, repressed for all good reasons. We think it keeps us safe. We think it makes us lovable. We think it makes us acceptable socially, culturally, all those different ways. What I'm realizing for myself is the tribe that I belong to and the people that I call together are willing to be more authentic and to bring up those things that we've suppressed, and to understand that we have so much more potential and so much more to give, and so much more lovable by our vulnerability and our ability to show those aspects of us that have been suppressed. So more love comes into the world, and that's the fact. And the more love that comes in, the more not love shows up.
We live in such a kind of secular society, and it's almost like certain ideas get taken on board and they kind of become the new religion. And then there's all this morality around it, which side are you on? And yeah, it's, and I suppose in a way the shadow kind of offers something different and outside of that, because if I can connect to my own authenticity, then I know my own position. You know, and that feels really important, to kind of be able to think for oneself and feel for oneself, you know.
Yeah, it is. And it allows you then to stand in your own power rather than to seek power from some other outside influence, if you like. But there's also something around whatever. So we make war, you know, you mentioned kind of alliances this way or that way, and whatever we're at war with, whatever we we're in conflict with, is an aspect of ourself. And again, it really comes back to what in me is conflicted here, what in me is, what aspect of me is intolerant or critical, judgmental, so that I can be in equanimity with whatever's going on. And of course that's hard, especially now. It's very easy to jump on this wagon or that, you know, to be on this side or that side, but it's still creating war and conflict. And sometimes conflict is important, you know, to kind of create something new. But that's only if it's constructive. If it's destructive, then that makes it more difficult. But we are in a process, I think, of everything crumbling anyway. So things are being destroyed everywhere. And we just have to, it's like, I say, we just have to watch that, witness that happening, and hold our own note. And that's where I think my vision is about the kind of world I want to live in, which is different to the one that's happening around me. But at the same time, I can't deny what's happening around me. I can't put my head in the sand and pretend it's not happening, because it is.
And in terms of things crumbling, you know, like we've had so many different chapters in that story, you know, like, you know, trust in the media, trust in the government, trust in the markets, you know, and what you're saying around coronavirus and the kind of doctors and nurses speaking out about how it was handled. Maybe science is the next kind of head on the block, you know, which science is kind of the new God, isn't it? So,
and science changes every 5 minutes because it has to, you know. The point of science is discovery, and every new discovery means that we can open the door to another, you know, like walk through another doorway. So we can't just rely and trust science. Look at, you know, how long it takes us to kind of embrace quantum science. You know, the new science is still not believed. We're still hanging on to the old Newtonian physics and all that means. And you know, Einstein, when was he around? Eons ago, giving us a new paradigm. But no.
And didn't he decode like the theory in his dreams?
Yeah, he was on a beam of light, wasn't he?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
So he would be put in a mental institution and given some drugs to make him, you know, a bit more like the rest of us. And yet, don't get me started.
Wow, that's so true, Chris. I never thought of that.
Yeah. So people that can, you know, can vision something completely outside of the box. This is really what we need right now. and we haven't got any real visionaries in our leadership anywhere. So that's, yeah, but we're way behind on what's possible. We're so far behind on what's possible, and it feels like we're dragging the past into the present, and then it's going to spill into the future. And I think how much better it would be if we could just go into the future and pull that in now, because I think we are so much better than, as a species, than we are showing ourselves to be right now. All the time we deny those dark aspects of ourselves, and we push them away, deny them, make them, vilify them, and at the same time we're pushing down our gold as well, our ability to be extraordinary human beings. And that's what makes me sad, that our gold is missing from the world right now.
So if people are watching this and they would like to do some shadow work, is there something, you know, a process, you know, that we can ask ourselves?
I think I remember my very first delving into shadow work was, and it's really simple. I drew around my left hand, and I drew around my right hand on 2 pieces of paper. And on the right, I wrote all the things I liked about myself. And then on the left, I wrote the opposite of that. So, for example, what am I good at? What do I like about myself? And when you start to look at the other side of that, so it's the other side of the coin, really, it's very hard. And I also asked a friend to add some things on both sides as well. What am I hiding from myself? And that's a good place to start. What am I hiding? And how can I then integrate those aspects that I am not liking about myself? How can I learn to like them? What do I need to do? And one of the things that I learned is to interview them, ask them what they really want, and why are they here, and what's important. What is the thing that those aspects of me fear most? And whether that's on the right or on the left, it doesn't matter. They're all parts of, we are made up of so many different parts, but to bring them back together is really important. But also the other thing is, what do you label? I'm with this black. The label black, with Black Lives Matter really up right now. There's so much in our language about this, like having a black mood, blackmail. You look at all the different aspects, and of course in our language, that all of those things are in the dark. They're not, shall we say, they're not positive, life enriching. And so our language even holds all of that, which means, of course, that on the other side of that, then the white is, pure white. We call it about pure white. And our language on that side is very interesting. So how do we embrace, without making everything grey, how do we embrace those two and look at that and go, wow, I see what we do and what we've done, and how can I bring that home to my heart and not hold these things as good or bad, right or wrong? I mean, there's a lot in that.
Yeah, it's so deep in the mythology, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It goes right to the core. And yeah, so there's what do you label whenever you label somebody, then bring it back home and say, where am I? Where could I be like that? Where am I like that? Because I love Anthony de Mello. He was a Jesuit priest and he got kicked out of the priesthood because he was too radical. But then they, this is lovely, as a shadow piece, they brought him back into the priesthood because they realized that it was better to have him on the inside than it was to have him on the outside creating havoc everywhere. So it's like, and that's a great shadow piece in itself. But his thing is, you're an ass and I'm an ass. You know, we all do crap things, but unless we own our, you know, those dark aspects of ourselves, we own them and say, yes, I too can be that. And that's uncomfortable. That is uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the stuff around, you know, the racial stuff, it's, there's such a big calling for everybody to do that personal work and to look and to see where those attitudes lie, you know, within me first and foremost, and to see that and to admit it. And
yeah,
it's got to be seen, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And that's the point. And it is being seen. It's come out from the shadow. It's on the table. I love that. I love the fact that that's happening. And it's really important then to, you know, because it's out there, to also bring it here. Because I can't influence everybody, but I can influence my own attitudes and my own sense of where am I with all of these things? Where do I sit? And I want to be able to sit in the middle, not go one side or the other, but to bring them both together. And yeah, it's hard when you get triggered.
And that's an invitation, isn't it? The trigger is the invitation to like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Definitely. It's an invitation to heal something. Not to point the finger this way or that way, but to heal something. And that's our work. That's what we do. Something that Carl Jung says, and he believes that shadow work is holy work because it makes us whole. And I think it's really important to look at how, in whatever way you can, to embrace your wholeness. You know, that's why your work and the work of artists is so important, because in our face then is something that we have repressed, suppressed, denied, we don't want to look at. And that means then when it has that effect, it's like, okay, how can I then bring that in and learn to accept it? So I think it's really important to work with that notion of acceptance, accepting that we are as magnificent as we are dreadful as a human race, and that the choices that we make are what's really important. But not from a place of rebellion against or denial, but from a place of embracing all of everything that we're capable of and making a choice of how we want to live. And we could talk for hours about the feminine aspect and, you know, what's happened to her and to be pushed down into the shadow. Crikey, there's so much in that as well. And your work shows that up too. It's like the suppression of the sacred feminine. Where is she in the world right now? I don't see her. And that's very sad, because then all we get is either the dark or the superficial. And there's something rather incredible about the divine and sacred feminine that has gone missing.
My understanding of it way back in time was that, you know, like we talked about the temple dances and, you know, the kind of the female mystery and the way women held that was physically and was through the body and was, you know, and that I see that is part of women's power, you know, and it's become kind of denigrated, or that, but it may be powerful in a different way. And there's that kind of Camille Paglia quote that I sent you about the femme fatale. The more she shows up, the more like nature is repressed.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting, and you know, the power of the feminine actually comes from the earth. It comes from the earth up through our bodies. So we embody the feminine, the Pachamama, Mother Earth. We embody that, all that entails. And then we can, when we do that, we can then connect with the divine. But yeah, we've really lost that by denigrating the earth, disconnecting from the earth, and only looking for the up. And that has led to to me, it's led to the superficial aspects of the feminine and not the wild, untamable, the part of us that is like creative. And you know, when we give birth, it's like, a big outburst, you know. and the same in a sense when orgasm happens, it's like we lose a sense of self and call in that otherness, that incredible connection to all that is for those moments. And that's the incredible power that the feminine has. And I think that we have lost that, and we're trying to reclaim it through sex, and the violence that comes with that is a different kind of violence to the wild of the feminine of Mother Earth. It's a different thing, and maybe because the feminine aspects of us has that power, then the masculine felt threatened, and then we ended up with a patriarchy. That's what I believe probably happened. And so we've lost it. And now, I spent a lot of time in women's groups looking to see what is the feminine? Where is she? Who is she? And that was part of my journey, because I saw that we were mimicking the masculine in our power, our power stance. And for me, that was never it. It was never about competing or climbing some kind of ladder. It's really about being connected to the earth, sitting in circle, no hierarchy, but everybody present for each other. And that was, that's been my journey with the feminine, really.
Well, again, it's like the having to fit in, isn't it? Like if women have to fit into a system that is, that the masculine is prevalent, then, like I found this recently, like just accepting the fact that I am cyclical. I am cyclical emotionally, physically, and I'm that's me, and I'm never gonna suddenly find myself on this straight line that's just so how can I work with that?
Oh, well, there you go. That's that. For me, that's the beauty of the feminine, because you're cyclical, then there's times when you dive down in, and there's times when you come up, and there's times when you dive down in. In the time of the goddess, the dreamer would be the oracle. So when a woman was in her moon time, she could be an oracle. You could ask any question and the answer would come through her, because in that dreamed space, you're open to the whatever, you know, you open yourself. And what we've done is, in our culture, we just carry on. So we get cross and irritable, and we can't dream. We just got to go to work and do the same old thing. And so we get, we get wild. We get different kind of wild, actually. We get crabby and grumpy and angry and like... So, and that's what's happened to us as women. We should be, in those times when we're in our moon time, we should be able to stop and dream. And that's where you could do your art. In those moments, something will come in, and wow, look what happens. So yeah, honor those cycles. And when you feel you're diving into that place, use that as an opportunity to see what's there, what needs to express itself. And for sure, it will be whatever the world needs in that moment. Yeah, I would really invite all people to connect, find out what's happening. When you feel all your issues coming up to the surface to be seen, you can be absolutely sure that when you're triggered by everything, there's a full moon. And the same when you start to kind of dive deep and you start to feel tired and like lacking in energy, you can look at the moon and go, there's a dark moon right now. And when you know that, then you can work with it. And the same applies with our shadow, to go back to that, whatever you've repressed, when you're stressed, when you're when you're triggered, things will explode out inappropriately, and then you wish you hadn't. It's like you lose your temper at the stupidest thing, when actually that's not what you're really mad at. You're mad at yourself. That's how it works. So it's like seeping out through the edges. And you see this in long-term relationships, where so much authenticity has been repressed and suppressed. If you're in a relationship where you can't be real, then you can feel these little darts come out, like, it's not nice to be on the other end of. It's far better to be real and authentic and speak the truth. And if I was to give anybody advice about that, I would say start with what you're feeling, because nobody can say to you you're not feeling that, but you have to go into your body and see what you're feeling. And feelings will give you a clue. But if you've in the habit of repressing your feelings, then you have to pull them out of the bag.